Thank you very much. Good morning. It's a real honor and pleasure to be here today to talk about cross-platform measurement and understanding today's dynamic consumer experience. The sessions previous to this were a great setup for me to talk about what we're doing within Nielsen around measuring video cross-platform and where things are headed in the future. So what I'd like to do is today cover four things. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about client pain points. You already heard a little bit about this in some of the previous conversations, but for all the opportunity that this cross-platform world creates, it also creates a lot of pain for our clients, and I want to talk briefly about those. The second thing I want to talk about is the 3R framework that we at Nielsen use as a way of thinking about advertising and media effectiveness on an end-to-end basis, and also share a little bit about our vision for where we're headed in the future with cross-platform video measurement. And then third, I want to talk about a few things that we've learned to date. We've been hard at work measuring things in the online world, in the TV world, and cross-platform, and I want to share some of the early learnings that we have and what we're learning in that space. And then last, if we have time, I'd like to talk for a few minutes about any questions you have and see if I can answer any of those. All right, so all of you know that Nielsen is in the business of measuring what people watch. Of course, traditionally that would be TV audience ratings, but increasingly it's also measuring what people do online, what they do on their tablets, and what they do on their smartphones. And we are not wed to a particular technology or even the Nielsen People Meter. We love set-top box data, and we have partnerships with a number of set-top box providers to bring in that kind of audience measurement information as well. We also measure what people buy. So most people think about the scanner data that we collect at retail, that all the CPG companies use, but we also have purchase panels, we have access to loyalty card data through our Nielsen Catalina Solutions joint venture, and we have access to about 95% of all the credit card transactional data and most of the debit card transactional data through a partnership with Argus, and one of the previous speakers talked about MBI. So we measure what people watch and what people buy, but what a lot of people aren't familiar with is we're not just measuring audiences and programming on the watch side, we're measuring the ads that people are exposed to, right? So most people don't know, for example, we measure every TV ad and every show every day in terms of effectiveness across about 70% of the viewing audience. So we have about 250,000 ads in our database around ad effectiveness. But we also measure ads online, we measure ads on tablets, and on smartphones as well. So did you know, for example, that we measure the ads on the iAd platform with Apple? Did you know that we measure promoted tweets and the effectiveness of those on the Twitter platform? Did you know that we've partnered with Google to measure ad effectiveness across TV and online video platforms? So if you think about it, when you're measuring what people watch, including the ads they're exposed to, and what people buy, and you're putting that together, you can create some pretty interesting analytics around what works and what doesn't work. Now, over the last 10 or 15 years, there have been a lot of sea changes and big shifts in the advertising and media ecosystem. So the rise of digital, the increase in social networks, the innovation in tools and technology, and a lot of the things you heard about earlier. But one of the biggest changes is more devices and more complexity, right? And let me just use a simple example. Last week, I was sitting at home with my wife and 3 kids who are age 6, 12, and 14, and they're watching Modern Family. I love Modern Family, but I actually wanted to watch a basketball game, so I was on my tablet, ESPN3, watching a college basketball game, right? So it goes away for a commercial break. I go to Amazon to download a book. I look up, and my kids are now on Netflix, watching something on the traditional TV via Netflix. I'm over here on Facebook doing some other things. When I look up again, they're looking at a DVR version of The Housewives, and streaming along the bottom are a bunch of promoted tweets. Now, all this happens in about 60 minutes, right? So the world that we live in is getting more complicated all of the time. And when you think about it from an advertiser standpoint, there's basically 2 things they want to do. They want to either maximize unduplicated reach or maximize cross-platform exposure. And in a world like this is getting increasingly difficult. So one of the things that we've realized is we've created some of our own issues, right? As more devices and more platforms become available, we've created a lot of metrics that are specific to platforms. And to be completely clear, I think every platform and device deserves its own set of unique metrics, but it also deserves to have a common set of foundational metrics. So instead of measuring above the fold or page views or click-through rates, we need some set of foundational metrics like reach, frequency, GRPs, against key demographic groups that provide the ability to look across platforms. So let me talk a minute about some of the biggest client pain points that we hear about. We've gone out and interviewed a lot of C-suite executives at advertisers, agencies, media companies, and even technology disruption companies. And we ask a really simple question: what are your biggest pain points around advertising and media effectiveness? And you hear three things. One, how much should I spend? Every CMO has a revenue, a volume, and a profit target for the next year. How much do I need to spend? How much do I need to spend to achieve that? Second is, how do I allocate across all these different platforms and devices? What used to be a very straightforward allocation exercise across TV and maybe print has become incredibly complicated and difficult for most marketers. And then lastly, how do I optimize in real time? The old paradigm was, I run my media plan, I measure maybe 12 months later, I find out what happened, and that's good enough? Well, that's just that. That's the old paradigm. In the new paradigm, it's quickly sensing what's happening, understanding what's working, what's not, and optimizing in real time. So to address this, one of the things we've worked on is the creation of what we call the 3R framework for measuring ad effectiveness as well as media effectiveness. So the 3 R's are reach, resonance, and reaction. And I think it provides a really simple framework for understanding the end-to-end advertising and media effectiveness in the ecosystem. So let me first talk about reach. So reach is about reaching your intended audience. It's about identifying the people that will be most volumetrically responsive to the advertising, and then making sure that you're actually reaching them. It also means making sure that if you've reached the right people, your ads are breaking through, that in fact people remember it's for your brand and it's changing consideration to buy your product. And lastly, is it driving reaction? Usually this is sales, but it could be driving people to your website, your Facebook fan page, or somewhere else. And lastly, when you think about reach and resonance, reaction really is a function of these two things. Optimizing and getting both of these things right is key to advertising and media performance. And then again, all this needs to be optimized in real time as much as possible. Now, our vision going forward is very straightforward. It's to measure the 3 R's. Who did my ads reach? What impact did it have on their attitudes? What did it motivate them to do? Across all screens and devices, TV, tablet, mobile, online, for both commercials and programs. And we want to do this not just for commercial and program, but paid, owned, and earned. So many of you probably saw our acquisition of Social Guide and our arrangement with Twitter to start measuring social TV ratings. And we want to do this globally. And if we do all of this well, it should enable clients, be they advertisers, agencies, or media companies, to better understand how much to spend, how to allocate, and how to optimize in real time. So now let me spend a few minutes talking about a few of the things that we've learned about as we've been measuring across platform. So the first thing is, as we go out and talk to clients and we say, what are you trying to achieve with cross-platform campaigns? Basically falls into two buckets. 60% of people are saying, I want to maximize unduplicated reach. We know the sales response curves for advertising are convex, and people want to maximize reach before they start building frequency, if at all possible. At the same time, we have 40% of clients that say, no, what I want to do is maximize cross-platform exposure. And we know that a TV and a digital ad exposure has more impact than 2 digital or 2 TV alone. So there's good rationale for both approaches. Now, before we jump into how we're actually doing against those two goals, let me just ground us in a little bit of data here. So video continues to be incredibly important for consumers. Consumers are consuming about 5 hours of video a day, according to our data. About 98% of that is still on traditional TV. Now, some of that's live, some of that may be DVR'd, some of it is on demand, but the traditional TV is still the dominant form that dominant platform where people are consuming video. I think one of the most interesting trends is to look at cross-platform media consumption simultaneously. And we know that about 90% of tablet and smartphone owners, have used their tablet or smartphone at some point while they're watching live TV. We also know that about 40% of people every day, at least once, use their tablet or smartphone while they're watching TV. So this is an opportunity for advertisers to think about how to better engage with consumers. Now, one of the things I talked about earlier was the world of online and some of the challenges of measuring there. And this is a space we've been very active in recently with online campaign ratings. So what is OCR? OCR is a tool that measures reach, frequency, and GRPs by key demographic group for online advertising campaigns. We measure in the aggregate and by individual website on a daily basis. So we have metrics that are comparable to TV. So here's an example of a particular campaign we measured for a client where 32% of the impressions were actually delivered to the desired audience, 68% were not. Now, interestingly, when you look at performance by individual website, you see that there are some really good websites like Site 1 or Site 7, and some like Site 3 that aren't so good, right? So why is this important? It's important because unless you understand this, it's really hard to do cross-platform either reach, maximizing unduplicated reach, or maximizing cross-platform exposure. And finding the sites that deliver your audiences the best is a great opportunity for the media side, the publishers, to be able to demonstrate the audience, as well as the advertiser side to be sure that they're getting for what they pay for. Now, I know there's some of you in the audience out there that are probably saying, okay, Randall, that's one example, that's interesting, but we're different, right? So we've now run over 2,000 campaigns. 29 of the top 50 advertisers and most of the big media agencies are using this tool. And what do we see when we look across all of these? What we see is that for very broad campaigns, like people 18 plus, it's pretty good, right? 78% of the population, 92% of the impressions on average are actually going to the intended audience. When you look at the other extreme at the bottom, men aged 18 to 24, 5% of the audience, only 22% of the impressions actually going to that audience. So said differently, almost 80% of the impressions against men 18 to 24 are not going to men 18 to 24. So the more narrow your audience, the bigger the opportunity is in terms of audience delivery. Here's another thing we've learned. When we look at publishers with registration data, we see that they perform better on average than those without registration data. And we also see that ad networks' on-target performance is pretty comparable to publishers without registration data. The other thing we see when we look across platform is when we not only measure reach, but we measure resonance, we know that cross-platform exposure really does deliver synergy. TV plus online exposure, in general, has more impact than TV alone or digital alone. We also know that online video ads score higher in online video than on TV, the same ads. So there really is magic between TV and online. Now, what do advertisers get, right? So what we've done is we've taken up a survey of all the clients that are using cross-platform campaign ratings, where we're measuring reach, frequency, GRP, audience delivery, not just for online, but for TV. So we can look at delivery on TV only, delivery online only, and then the combination of the two. What we call either, both. Now, when you look at the clients and say, I'm trying to increase reach, maximize unduplicated reach, you can look at the TV reach of 37%, the online reach of 9%. If you just multiply those together, that would be random duplication. That's what you would get, right, if the TV plan and the digital plan were just planned completely independently, right? Same thing for maximizing frequency. Campaign average 45% on TV, reach 2% for online, so you'd expect duplication of 1.1. So what do we actually see in the campaigns that we've measured to date? We actually see that the duplication is about as if it were random, right? So what is that telling us? It's telling us that there's a big opportunity in planning to do a better job across TV and online in terms of either maximizing unduplicated reach against the intended audience or maximizing online duplication. Okay, so let me summarize with a few basic points here. Traditional TV still dominates in terms of video consumption, but cross-platform viewing is growing fast, and I think one of the most interesting trends that I mentioned earlier was around simultaneous usage. The second thing is advertisers are really struggling with cross-platform, and it's not getting better. If anything, it's getting worse because of the fragmentation and all the different options and choices that they have that they never had before. The third thing is advertisers really want to either extend reach or maximize the overlap across TV and online video. Those are the two simplest applications, and yet it's still getting increasingly difficult for them to do that. Next to last, there's a big opportunity to improve audience delivery in the online space. You know, across all the campaigns that we've measured, about 50% of impressions in online are actually being delivered to the intended audience. So there's a big opportunity for improvement there. And lastly, cross-platform execution isn't yet meeting client needs. So there's an opportunity to bring TV and online video together in ways that better serve the needs of the clients. So what's our view from the Nielsen standpoint about how we're going forward? First of all, we really believe in this 3R model of ad effectiveness, measuring not only the reach of the campaigns, but the resonance and the reaction. Second, we believe we have to measure these across all the key platforms, TV, online, mobile, as well as tablet, and we have to have some foundational metrics that are common across platforms. Third, we think we have to measure paid, owned, and earned, and increasingly be able to value these as different things and how they work together. And last, we need to be able to measure all this in real time as much as possible. That's a lot to do. It's a long-range vision. We're clearly not there yet, but we think we're on the way toward that. Thank you very much.